Welcome back, Tiger fans, to Rockin' Radio's football podcast. I'm Nate Edwards. That's Nathan Hurst. This is Before the Box Score. Welcome to more offseason content. Tonight is going to be about coaches, defensive variety of the current staff and previous headmen of other staffs. We're going to just lean super hard into the offseason content because that's kind of where we're at. Nathan Hurst, how are you doing today?
Doing better than I was a few days ago. Forgiveness to the lovely listeners for the throat lozenges. They're the only thing that stands between me and hacking coughing fits that would end the podcast early. So we're on the rebound though. So I'm glad we're recording this week and not last week. It would not have gone as smoothly.
Yeah. And for me, on this end, I've been talking straight for about 12 hours. So I am on the last legs and equally lozenged up. So that is what we're going to be doing today. You can't smell the menthol, but trust me, you can now, can't you? Yeah, that's the magic of radio. All right, let's talk about Missouri football. As we said, we want to talk about coaches today. Nathan Hurst has been doing a good series on the coaching staff. If you remember, during the season, he was giving grades out to Corey Batoon. And of course, now that we're in the offseason, we're craving content. Why not? Let's just do the entire staff. So, Nathan Hurst, I kind of wanted at first just to ask you, when you do your grades, what exactly are you looking for, and what can bump a borderline grade into the next level?
I look at a couple different things. First and foremost, I'm going to look at context based on what talent a specific area of the unit is coming in. What talent have they lost? How did that unit perform last year versus how did that unit perform this year? Those are the two big things. So if the defense loses 5 draft picks off of last year's team, which they did, and then brings in a new coach, I'm probably going to be a little more lenient on some of the grades I'm giving based on having to replace that type of talent. That said, that only goes so far. So if a defense set a certain standard the year before, and then this year's team was significantly better or significantly worse, that's going to weigh into those individual grades. So I took the longest look at Corey Batoon, and this week we'll talk about defense. Next time around, I think we'll talk about offense. I haven't gotten into the nitty gritty with the individual offensive coaches yet. But this week we'll take a look at defense, and we'll start with the head man himself, Corey Batoon. If you remember, I did a mid-season report card on him just to kind of see how he had done middle of the way through. By that time, I think Mizzou had played Texas A&M and had their first kind of defensive gaffe of the year. But other than that, the defense have been playing very, very well. And to be honest, they played better than expected, I think, all throughout the entire season. But they tended to wane off a little bit in the second half of the year. They also played a couple of the better offensive teams that they were going to see in the season, South Carolina, Alabama, later in the year as well. So it kind of evened out. But at the midseason, I was pretty high on how Batoon's unit had been performing. So I think I ended up giving him an A- at the midway point. Having gone through the full season, that those grades change a little bit, and we'll kind of break it down by in 3 different areas. So we'll start with the secondary performance of how they did overall, how Batoon kind of operated that entire unit moving in, and looking at the stats from 2023 to 2024 in terms of passing yards. This year's defense gave up close to 25, about 26 actually yards fewer per game than 2023. So there was a positive movement there. Unfortunately, they weren't as good in the kind of the more efficiency stats: yards per pass attempt, yards per completion, passer rating. Those all took a downturn, not only from last season, but from mid-season too. All of those stats were actually better at the mid-season point than they were in 2023. South Carolina comes along, throws the ball over the defense. Alabama comes along, kind of in the second half, throws the ball over the defense, kind of knocked some of those numbers down. So they finished lower than those. But what they did do a better job, and you'll hear this theme throughout this discussion, much better job on preventing first downs, passing first downs, rushing first downs in general. This defense did a much better job of limiting the first downs, and they did that by doing a great job on third down, which we'll get to. So overall, secondary was okay. I think of the two units, it was the weaker of the two. So he's going to get a passing grade, but I gave him a B- for the secondary overall. If you look at the talent they lost, two starting cornerbacks, starting safety, significant amount of NFL level talent that came off this
Yes.
team.
NFL level corners.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
in some argument, you might even say B- might be a little harsh because of that amount of talent. But I think the late season regression that we saw kind of weighed me down a little bit. If they had been a little bit better in the second half of the year, he'd probably been more like a B or B+ in this area. But even Iowa, and now the defense got better in the second half, but even Iowa was throwing the ball a little bit in the first half, and you don't want to see that. You do not want to see that. So B- in the passing game.
Yeah, and I think really for me the context speaks a lot, and I'm not trying to wave away the secondary's performance, but yes, two NFL corners being gone, an NFL safety being gone. Yeah, you return guys, but really the magic of 23 was the fact that you had two corners, really three corners, who you could throw out there. You didn't really have to worry too much about it. Between Chris Abrams-Drain, Ennis Rakestraw, and then Drayden Norwood rotating in, you felt really good about single covering them up on team's best receivers and then letting the safeties cook in the middle, let the linebackers and safeties kind of flip between their coverage, blitz, man, zone, whatever. You at least trusted your outsiders to lock it down for the most part. You did not have that this year. And part of that is because you had Toriano Pride in his first year at Mizzou. You had Nick DeLoach in his first year starting. And you still had Drayden Norwood, who's great, but it's only one guy. When you look at kind of the advanced stuff, Drayden Norwood, if quarterbacks were throwing at Toriano Pride's guy, they had a 69.5 QBR. That's not great. Nick DeLoach, you threw at him, opposing quarterbacks had a 74.5 QBR. Also not great. But if they were throwing at Drayden Norwood, 37.8. Noticeable. You had one guy who could take the field away. You did not have two. So obviously Pride and DeLoach did well. They forced incompletions at a really strong rate, but if you got one side of your field that's giving up 9.5 yards per attempt like Pride or 8.4 yards per attempt like DeLoach, it makes it easier for the offense to pick a side to work. And I think that's truly it. And I say that to say, Toriano, Nick, this isn't me picking on you. You are going to do be better in year two. I fully expect that. But to trot them out in the first year and expect them to have no drop off, which I don't think we did, but you see a drop off from there because you saw a drop off in talent and experience. And I think it really starts with them.
For sure. I'm going to pivot a little bit here since we're talking about the passing game, the secondary. Let's switch over to the two assistant coaches who are involved in this unit as well. Al Pogue, assistant head coach / cornerbacks coach. He was the one who really was the front line in terms of trying to get these new guys, replacement guys, to fill the shoes of an Ennis Rakestraw, of a Chris Abrams-Drain. Very difficult to do. Very difficult job. We had hoped that Toriano Pride coming in would have made a bigger splash initially. He still has time to do that. He's still got another year of eligibility, but not quite what we had hoped. And so it was already going to be one of the positions that lacked the amount of depth that we really wanted. But so he did okay. I gave him a B- as well. I feel like that was fair across the board. B- in the passing game for Batoon, B- for Pogue. Not, to be honest, I'm not sure, talking it out, how much more he could have done with who we had. But also part of the job is recruiting and developing guys. And Nick DeLoach may get there, and Toriano Pride may get there. But like Marcus Clark, we really didn't see a whole lot of development there at all. He played less last year than he did the year before, which was a little strange. But I think they just really were not comfortable with him on the field. So B-, he passes. That was fine. I'm going to move down to Jacob Yoro, who might be the most under the radar position coach on the roster. The fact that he was hired in the first place, I think probably went over a lot of, or under a lot of people's heads, or a lot under their feet. It was kind of snuck in there. Not that it was done, with anything other than the up and up. But once the NCAA made changed the rules, which allowed more on-field coaches for the coaching staff, they were able to elevate Jacob Yoro, who was an analyst defensive analyst. He elevated to the safeties coach. Now he's had experience as a position coach and even as a DC, I think, at Hawaii before that. So he's an experienced coach, deserving of getting that elevation. But to be honest, I couldn't have told you that he was the safeties coach. I had still thought that it was Corey Batoon, kind of moonlighting as both. No,
Sure.
it was Jacob Eora. So safeties, I thought, on the whole, considering what they lost, who they had returning, I feel like this was the worst performing unit on the field. You've got Jacob Charleston coming back, very experienced. You had a Sidney Williams. You had Trevez Johnson. You had Dalen Carnell. We're going to throw him into this group as well. A very experienced group. All four of those guys had at least 3, if not 4 years of experience playing college football. I think Charleston might have actually had been in his 5th year of playing. So did Sidney Williams, actually, I think, as well. So very experienced group. Then you toss in Marvin Burks, who we really had hoped to see a big development into his sophomore year. He gets the starting role. Okay, let's see what this guy can do. Maybe he'll get better along as the season goes. And I can't really say that I saw much development there. If there was one area or guy that you could really point to most of the big plays breaking downfield, I think more often than not, you're going to look back at Marvin Burks or at someone in the safety group not necessarily doing the job or missing an assignment or what have you, on a lot of those big plays, big chunk plays downfield. So a little disappointed in the safety group. I think there's going to be an opportunity to really improve that this next year. But and I think that the coaches saw that the lack of talent really hurt them there. They bring in Jalen Catalan, who's going to be huge, but Mose Phillips as well, Santana Banner, some guys who've produced at a high level already. So I think this next year is going to be really where we're going to see if Jacob Eora is going to be his job long term or not. I gave him a C+, which might sound a little harsh, but I was really disappointed with how the safeties played, and I felt like that was the biggest weak link overall.
Sure. I mean, let's call it what it is. I don't want to disparage a college player, but they are making money now, so I feel a little bit better calling them out by name. You mentioned Marvin Burks as a liability in pass coverage. I think you could say that fairly. Of all the guys who were dropped into coverage more than 250 times, he had the second worst defensive QBR, 69.1, right below Toriano Pride. So if you're thinking of your big impact, blue chipper guys, they're the ones that were giving up some of the worst. But again, Marvin Burks was in his first year starting. Yeah, he had been rotating from he had been bumped up from a rotational piece into the starting position. And he's more of a havoc weapon. I think if you look back, he had 4 havoc plays on the year, 1.5 tackles for loss, 1 interception, 1 pass broken up, 3 run stops. Like that's where you want him. He's more comfortable, I think, doing that. You're asking him to, drop in pass coverage. Like obviously he can, he's a D1 athlete, but that needs a little bit more refinement. So I would agree with you on that. Surprisingly, the safety who did the best in pass coverage was Dalen Carnell, defensive QBR 44.2. So if you compare those two, Marvin Burks had quarterbacks had 10 for 17 passes, 162 yards and 1 touchdown on him. Whereas Dalen Carnell, 13 of 23. So he got picked on more, gave up fewer yards with 146 and gave up no touchdowns. He also had 6 passes broken up compared to Marvin Burks 1. So we always think like, oh, Dalen Carnell's the havoc guy and everyone else is going to fill in around him. Dalen Carnell is really good in pass coverage. But nobody else really was. And so that's, again, it was easier for offenses to find somebody to pick on. I think that's really what it comes down to, the difference between 23 and 24. There were obvious weak links that coordinators go, okay, we're going to hit that. And again, a lot of that comes with inexperience. A lot of that comes with the fact that they were pushed into the starting role for the first time. Obviously, it was planned that way. This isn't like some surprise, but you got to take your lumps when you're a starter. So I agree. It could have been better. You saw some when they were playing in a comfort level, like they were good, but there's some edges that they need to kind of smooth out. And I think they can, but yeah, I would agree with you. Last year's safeties were not as good as 23 safeties.
Yeah. And a guy like Burks, he's got the talent to be a good player. Right? He's got the
100%.
athleticism.
No.
So he is. We're not saying he can't develop into a good safety for this team. We didn't really see it last year as a young player. He's still got 2 more years to grow. He's
Galen Carnell was a liability in pass coverage in his first year, so like it's part of it. It's part of it
for sure. Yeah. So I mean, they're going to get better. He's going to get better. He's going to get to learn alongside and under some really good ones next year as well. So that hopefully that will help him as well. So this is a position that was the weakest. It also has the most room to grow, and I could easily see that the safeties being one of if not the strongest position group on the defense next year, based on returning guys, based on the transfers coming
portal,
in
man,
as well.
the portal. They pulled in a lot. They lost a lot of guys. Like it's almost a clean reset with a couple guys hanging over. So yeah, I agree. I'm very excited for the safeties, and yeah, I think it could definitely improve. But of course, that's the secondary, and they really weren't asked to do as much pass coverage in the beginning, and were asked a lot more in the end, and that's where you kind of started to see the warts. Now, the other side of that, defensive front 7, front 6, however you want to break it down. I mean, that's the other aspect of it. If you have a good pass rush, you can cover a lot of warts on defense. How did you view the defensive line and linebackers?
So, looking at kind of comparing stats from 2023 to 2024, front 7 performance, and when I say that, I'm including the running game, so yards per carry, yards per rushing yards per game. Then also, and I threw this, and this isn't entirely fair because yes, secondary players can have havoc plays as well, but I put in tackles for loss, sacks per game, sack percentage as well. All of those stats, every single one that I listed off, was worse in 2024 than it was in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
Now, none of those were specifically bad in terms of national average, but you would certainly like to see them a lot higher. So rushing yards per game, 15 yards more per game in 24 than 23. And it comes down to about a third of a yard per rush more in 24 than 23. And then tackles for loss. This is where you see the big drop off. Tackles for loss, 1.5 tackles per loss fewer in 24 than 23. Sacks per game, more than 1 sack per game less in 24 than in 23. And then that sack percentage in 23, 9% of dropbacks ended in a sack, which is great. In 24, 7.5%. So that's a full 1.5% less there. So this front 7, way less havocy. And I think a lot of that might come down to how Corey Batoon was calling his defense.
Could be.
Way fewer blitzes. He would send them from time to time, but especially after Khalil Jacobs was injured, you just did not see a lot of weird or interesting or surprising or out of nowhere blitzes. Batoon was a lot more content with letting his front 4 rush, letting the secondary set back and go. And thankfully, Johnny Walker played really, really well at the end of the season, and he kind of single-handedly carried the pass rush for the Tigers, getting a sack in what was it, the last 7 games of the season, which is great. No one else really did much in that from that sense. So Zion Young finished with 2.5. Eddie Kelly finished with 2.5, maybe 3. So not a whole lot there. So overall, I based on who they lost, I mean, we've got to go back to context, of course. Losing Darius Robinson, first-round draft pick, that's going to put a hole in your front 7. All right. Losing 3 of your 4 stud defensive tackles, that's going to make a huge hole in especially your running defense. And so I would contribute the losses of Jernigan and Landry and George. That might have been the biggest. Those losses might have been the biggest reason for the rushing yards, 15 yards more per game. But overall, because of the context, because of who they lost, all the linebackers though really were back. I mean, they added Flagg. They lost their havoc guy I'm losing my mind here. Hopper, Tyron Hopper. So that's another reason. That's another tackle for loss reason why the tackles for loss went down in 24. So because of that, even though the numbers are all worse, the amount that they lost in that front 7, I kept him at a B-, Batoon at a B- there as well. It was good enough. It wasn't. There was. If you're looking at national rankings in terms of all these numbers, their worst national ranking was in yards per rush. 4.3 yards per rush, 68th nationally. Not great. You'd love to see that higher, but it wasn't disastrous by any means,
Sure.
especially when you're playing in the SEC and you're playing against some really good running backs, some really good offensive lines. You're going to give up some running yards. That's just kind of how it is. So B minus for Batoon. I'm really hoping that he's going to find some ways to create some more havoc next year. He'll have Khalil Jacobs healthy. He'll have a couple extra really fun guys on the defensive end. He'll have Darius Smith. He'll have the other Georgia, Damon Wilson as well. So lots of fun toys to play with, and I hope he plays with them a lot and does some fun and interesting things. Tristan Newsome coming back. We thought we were going to lose him.
That's going to be big. That's going to be big.
So having him back will be great as well. So there's potential, just like the secondary, just like the safety position, there is potential for this unit, this front seven, to be a lot better next year, just by the fact of who they brought in the transfer portal.
Yeah. So you lose Darius Smith in fall camp, and by all reports, he was going to start. And by all reports, he was a menace off the edge. And you lose him in fall. And then you lose Joe Moore, who I'm not saying was going to be, the second coming of Reggie Wayne, but that was an experienced guy who could eat snaps and give some rest for the other guys to be playing at a higher level. We talked about several years how Missouri's strength, like as you alluded to, was the amount of guys that they could rotate with very little drop off, and that on the edge anyway, they just did not have that. Mostly due to injury, but also just kind of like a lack of experience for guys to be able to step up and perform when they needed to. So you mentioned Johnny Walker, excellent year. He's probably going to be playing in the NFL. Another one of those D-line zoo guys that we can be proud of. So he was absolutely good. There's no doubt about that. You mentioned everybody else though. Do you want to guess, Nathan Hurst, of the defensive lineman for Missouri who had more than 100 snaps on the year? Okay. It's like legitimate snaps. The defensive lineman who had more than 100 snaps on the year. Do you want to guess how many had a pressure rate over 10%?
One, maybe two.
Okay. Well, you should stick with one because it was just one.
It would have been just Johnny then. Yeah, but I wasn't sure. I mean, Chris McClellan for a defensive lineman, I feel like had a pretty decent pressure rate, but he played so many snaps it probably was fairly low. But I was happy with his ability.
Yeah, he had 221 snaps where he was rushing the passer. Chris McClellan. He had a 5% pressure rate, but he did get 2.5 sacks out of it. So if he was getting close, he was getting there. Johnny Walker.
Does Eddie Kelly have more than 100 snaps on there?
Yeah, 113 snaps.
He would have gotten pretty close to that.
113 snaps, 8% pressure rate.
Okay.
He's actually your third best because Zion Young is right at 10%. Okay. He had 229 snaps, right at 10. And my question was greater than. Now, here's my follow-up. On the 2023 defensive line, how many defensive linemen with over 100 snaps had a pressure rate over 10%?
Ooh, probably three or four.
Okay. The answer is one.
Oh, wow.
So
Johnny Walker didn't even get over 10%.
He didn't. He had 304 snaps when he was rushing the passer, only an 8.9% pressure rate. Jaden Jernigan, 3.7. Realis George, 6.3. Christian Williams, 6.8. Josh Landry, 5.2. Niles Gaddy, remember him? 6% flat. Joe Moore, 8%. Like they created havoc, but it was coming from Tyron Hopper. It was coming from Dalen Carnell. It was coming from Chuck Hicks. I know we have feelings about him, but he was a terror. Tristan Newsome. And this year was a lot of the same. You did not have a lot of defensive linemen creating pressure, which I would argue you need to, but the 23 team showed that you didn't have to do it, but I would prefer it that way. And again, it was Tristan Newsom with a 22% pressure rate, second best on the team. Khalil Jacobs with a 31% pressure rate, best on the team. Nick Rodriguez, 23% pressure rate, third best on the team. Nick DeLoach, he was a corner, but like you get the idea. It's the linebackers that create the pressure, at least in the past 2 years. And I'm not saying that's the only way to do it. In fact, I would prefer linemen to step up and do this. But it seems to be when you get creative with your blitzes, it's the linebackers that get the most pressure and turn that into sacks. That's what we've seen the past 2 years. So I don't know what we're going to do now, but hopefully Darius Smith and the Georgia imports and the new guys can ratchet up the pressure. Because if you can get 2 guys with pressure rates, man, that's how you do it. That's how you do it.
And I think that we talked about Khalil Jacobs getting injured already, but once he went out, then he kind of just, for the most part, stopped sending guys from different levels besides the front four. So we having Jacobs back next year will be big. Jeremiah Trotter will be great. Gabor as well, or Bayor, as well. So it'll be interesting to see which of those new guys will be the blitzers. But even if they're not, and you have Jacobs and Newsom just running in there, I think that's plenty, as long as he doesn't go away from it, unless of course you have Darius Smith and David Wilson just absolutely wrecking shop, in which case by all means drop 8 and let those guys just run to the ball every time.
Absolutely,
I'd be totally fine with that.
Yeah, the old Ndamukong Suh drop 9, let him do it.
Good Lord, it would work. It worked.
It did.
That kind of brings us into our other assistant coaches. Al Davis, defensive line, interior line. He's the one that had to replace the losses of Jernigan and George and Landry. Did that. He had Chris Williams back. We had Chris McClellan, brought in Sterling Webb, a couple of young guys, Marquise Graciel, Jalen Marshall. And you might be sensing a theme here, but I went with B- for Mr. Al Davis as well. This unit was once again good enough. Not, the rushing statistics, not amazing, not horrible. Having to replace a lot of guys. Where I think I kept him from getting a B or B+ was I was just the lack of development from a Marquise Graciel, from a Jalen Marshall, from a Sam Williams. These are guys that you really hope that at least one of those guys would have stepped up into a really, at worst, solid, dependable middle interior guy, and that just doesn't seem to be happening. So, and they really didn't bring anybody in the portal either. So I'm not sure if they were expecting that to happen this time around, but they didn't. We'll be back with they lose Christian Williams, who's a huge loss, and they're not really replacing with anybody but who they already had on the roster. So it's going to be interesting. He's got his work cut out for him, because I'm worried that it flips from the very back end of the defense to the very front end of the defense, where we're looking at perhaps some of the weaker unit on the defense this next year.
You could, but again, Sterling Webb was fine. I expect him to make a leap in year 2, because just like a high school recruit, transfer recruits seem to need a year to acclimate too. So I have faith that he can do well. I've seen him do well, and I think he can. Chris McClellan's back. He'll be in year 2 as well. Marquise Graciel will, at this point, you need to have a step up in what you're looking at. Jalen Marshall, you be a 4th-year junior as well. I don't know after that. I really liked Elias Williams out of Florida, the 4-star. He'll be a redshirt freshman this upcoming year. You're looking at maybe like a Justin Bodford, also out of Florida, who by all means had high praises when he was coming out of high school, had 6 snaps last year. So maybe they step up. So yeah, you could say, oh man, they didn't take anybody on the interior, but I think you also just have a lot of options right now. And so I'm going to choose this as a good thing, where they go, yeah, we just had a lot of guys in their first year or who weren't ready, and we're going to get them ready. And yeah, you want, a transfer to make you feel a little bit better, but man, there really weren't a lot of good players in the portal this year. I think teams are stepping up and paying their studs at this point. So you do get a lot of kind of backups and rotational pieces in there, and you don't want to just bring a guy in to bring a guy in. And if you like what you got, I think that's good. Now we'll see if it's worth it, but I like that. And then yeah, for you safeties, super exciting. I'm so excited for the defensive ends, man. Like, there's so much talent there. There's so much. Like, you almost can't. Well, you can be bad, but boy, I'm very excited to see what the rotations are and what that unit can be.
Yeah, very excited for the defensive ends for next year. Brian Early will kind of transition right into that. He was the defensive end edge coach. Um, you're gonna feel like I'm a broken record. B minus for Mr. Early. I promise there'll be different grades other than B minus, but the defense was a very B minus this year. um, he got Johnny Walker up to 9.5 sacks. I mean, great season for Johnny. His best year, and in his last one. You'd hope for a little more on the pass rushing from Zion Young, from Eddie Kelly Jr. But you lose a Darius Smith, a guy that you were expecting to be a major contributor there before the season even starts. That's going to hurt. Now, a little frustrating there, and it's impossible. I would not blame Brian Early for losing Williams Nwaneri or Jalen Brown. I'm sure those were much more victims of NIL, but it was frustrating to have guys with a lot of talent there that barely saw the field, and then skipped out of town. So not gonna cast aspersions on Brian Early for that by any means. But he's had talent on the team. He will have talent next year. Hopefully they're able to take a step forward with the amount of pressure that they can generate. So B minus for Mr. Early. And moving on, we'll spend too much time on DJ Smith since he is dearly departed. Linebackers, I thought they took a little step back last year from the previous year as well. Now they lost Tyron Hopper. Khalil Jacobs got hurt. I'm gonna chalk it up as the reason they were less havocy is because Khalil Jacobs got hurt, because he was very havocy before he got hurt. They were fine. They were okay. They weren't a liability by any means. They weren't the reason that and this defense did not give up big busted runs right up the middle for long explosive plays. That's not what they were doing. When they gave up an explosive play, it was passes down the field. So B for Mr. Smith. Good luck to you. Good luck to you at Appalachian State. I'm looking forward to what this unit looks like next year with some new guys, some less eighth year senior personal foul machines on the team. I think the linebackers have the potential to be very strong next year. So I'm excited to see what they do as well.
Yeah. Strong recruiting profiles coming out of high school, which, whatever weight you want to put into that. But between Jeremiah Beasley, Nick Rodriguez, Josiah Trotter now, Dante McClellan, all those guys were at least 4 stars coming out of high school, and they all have at least 2 years to play, which that whips. I love that. Potential is high, but you also need to prove it. And Tristan Newsom's coming back, like you said. They're bringing Kyle Baynor out of Nebraska just to be a steady, experienced piece that you can slot in. Josiah Trotter was an all freshman performer last year at West Virginia. And you still have Brian Huff. You still have Nick Rodriguez. Like, you have a lot of options here. And I think the modern game, it's about options and depth. And if you can deploy that, you can go a long way, because you can weather the injuries and play a 18 game season now. If you make it all the way, like, you need to be healthy, and you got to have options. So that's good. Well, yeah. Overall, defense was what?
So overall, well, yeah, that took me to the final grading for Corey Batoon. We got total defense, and these are really the stats that actually matter. We could talk about individual rushing stats. We could talk about passing stats and how you're doing on either side on either one of those, but it all works together to one, to make one big cohesive thing. And when you look at how Corey Batoon's defense performed on a whole, you're looking at points per game. I mean, ultimately, that's what it matters. How many points per game are they giving up? They gave up 0.3 points per game more than 2023. So basically identical. 22.1 points a game versus 21.8, basically the same. That's great. If you're giving up 3 touchdowns a game and that's it, your defense, that's what you're gonna ask of your defense. If your offense is only tasked with scoring 3 touchdowns and a field goal to win a game, you're gonna take that every time, because you're gonna hope that the offense is gonna be able to put up 3 touchdowns and a field goal over the course of an entire game. So points per game, solid. Points per play, 0.362 points per play. That's fine. Not great. Worse than last year, but just by a little bit. It was 0.325 in 2023. Red zone scoring percentage, 81.82% this year. Pretty good. Pretty good. Got some stops on fourth down, a couple of missed field goals. Thank you, Vanderbilt. So, you're happy with that, especially when your offense is scoring at a 90+% on the other end. You're going to be happy with that. Yards per game, 33.8. So they were better total in terms of yards per game than they were in 2023. Gave up 347 in 23, 338 in 24. Yards per play was a little worse, I think, basically because they gave up, half a yard per rush more, and that's going to play out that way. Here's where they were really strong. Okay, and this is where Corey Batoon gets the most flowers, I think, overall. First downs per game, third down conversion percentage. This is where this defense was really good. They gave up 17 first downs per game. That was an improvement of a first down and a half from last year. So not massive, but it was an improvement. Third down conversions. They gave up only 3.7 third down conversions per game, which is an astonishing amount. Mm-hmm. So if every third, think of all the third downs that happen in a game. This defense only allowed the offense to convert less than 4 of those. That ranked third in the entire country. So that was great. Third down conversion percentage. This team only allowed their opposing teams to convert third downs into first downs 30% of the time. That was 5th in the entire country. Those are outstanding numbers. And that when you're playing complementary football with your offense, who already is not very explosive, who wants to ball control, who wants to keep the ball, slow it down, slowly matriculate down the field, that means that's going to limit possessions. So you as a defense also have to limit possessions, and or you as a defense have to increase the number of possessions your offense is going to have because they're already going to be limiting them. The defense did a great job of doing that by getting off of the field. Mm-hmm. Less than 1 out of 3 times the opposing offense converted first down. That was outstanding. So that's where he really thrived. Dialing up the right call, or in a few cases maybe getting a little lucky. Hard to say. I'm sure some luck played a little bit into it, but also some good defense as well. The one area that they could have improved, takeaways per game. Now a lot of that is luck. Certainly fumbles are a lot of luck, but they only had 1.3 takeaways per game, 1.7 the year before. You would hope that with an increased havoc rate, you're just going to increase the chances for crazy stuff to happen, for a quarterback to throw the ball blindly to a linebacker, for a sack fumble, for someone taking the handoff because they busted through the line and broke up the mesh point during a zone read one more time a game. So if they can increase the havoc rate, it's going to increase those takeaways next year, and this defense will be even better than they were this year.
100%.
So for total defense, Batoon gets an A-, I think, mm-hmm. Considering all considered what he was replacing, the fact that a lot of these numbers were nationally top of the line. So final grade for Corey, B-, B- in rushing and passing game, B- in running game, A- total defense. Gave him an even B. Good, solid first year. Good enough to win 10 games. When Mizzou wins 10 games, that is a very good season, if not great. And this defense was a significant reason why this team won 10 games. And we'll get to the offense next time in terms of some shortcomings perhaps that came there. This defense kind of filled the void a little bit from what we were expecting going into the season. So solid B for Corey, and we'll hope that it is an even better grade next year.
There you go. Very good. Very good. So, in my best Saw voice, I want to play a game. And the game that I want to play is Vibes versus Records. I don't know if we get, Levi, we got to get like some Price is Right music. Yeah. Nathan Hurst, come on down. You're our lucky contestant on Guess That Whip winning percentage, right? We'll workshop it. I don't know. Do what you got. Do what you got, Levi. We'll see what it is. No, so I posted something on Monday. Because being a fan of a football team or early inning team, so much of it is vibes versus the actual numbers, which is like the whole point why Bill Connolly created Mizzou Sanity back in the day and then Rock M, is to provide numbers, provide context on the vibes that we are feeling. And of course, we've been blessed as Missouri fans to have a football coach named Gary Pinkel, who was in charge for 15 years, and then Eli Drinkwitz, who has elevated Mizzou to the heights that it's currently at. And then, that one guy, Barry Odom, who's been really good other than at Missouri. So, we know overall records. You can look that up. Wikipedia's got that. You could look at that and whatever. I'm more concerned, like, situationally, how do these coaches do? I'm really curious how that stacks up, because right now, Gary Pinkel had 15 years, Barry Odom had 4, and Eli Drinkwitz, we're sitting in 5. So I just wanted to see what it was like, because we know Drinkwitz has a reputation, we know Pinkel has a reputation, of course Odom certainly does, but how does that stack up? So Nathan Hurst, welcome to the game. Sit down, son. We got 16 scenarios for you. You are going to guess the winning percentage from best to worst and certain situations for each coach. And from what I understand, you know what they are, but you have not done any research. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm going in with virgin eyes and virgin guesses.
Love it. Okay. So we're going to rank Gary Pinkel, Barry Odom, and Eli Drinkwitz from best to worst in winning percentage. We're going to start at home. Who do you think has the best record at Faurot Field? Number 1, number 2, number 3. What do you got?
I'm going to go Drinkwitz, number 1.
Okay.
Then I'm going to go Odom and then Pinkel.
Okay. Very good. Drinkwitz, Odom, Pinkel is what Hurst is saying. Survey says, no, I don't have any cool graphics. You're right. Drinkwitz is best. Do you want to guess what his home record is? It was home winning percentage, I should say, is.
Oh man.
Is it 50 to 60? Is it 60 to 70, 70 to 80?
It's going to be pretty good. It's going to be like 80-ish, 75 to 80, something around there.
Okay. 79.4% winning percentage at home. He is 27-7. Now, for the second spot, you thought Odom would have the second best home record. I think a lot of this is going to deal with small sample sizes, so you're not too far off. It's actually Gary Pinkel at 69.5%. He was 66-29 at home. Okay. That leaves Barry Odom last. This is not an uncommon theme for this game, but bear with me here. Do you want to take a guess at what Odom's home record was? 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80? Well, I mean,
probably. I mean, I would have thought 60 to 65, so I would have thought it was closer to Pinkel.
That's good. 64.3%. 18-10 at home, which seems like a lot of losses because it was. Yeah. All right, so let's flip it. Let's go on the road. Who do you think had the best road record from a winning percentage standpoint? Gary Pinkel, Barry Odom, or Eli Drinkwitz? Who do you got number 1?
I'll go Pinkel 1, Drinkwitz 2, Odom 3.
Okay, very good. Survey says Pinkel is number 1 on the road at a whopping 49.3% road winning percentage. These are true road games. These are not neutral sites. These are not bowl games. These are road victories.
That is better than I thought it would be.
34-35. Number 2, you said Drinkwitz.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is Odom. 35% on the road. Yeah, Barry Odom. 7-13 on the road overall, which leaves dear old Eli Drinkwitz. I've said before he's got a problem on the road. Ta-da! 34.8% winning percentage. He is 8-15. That is right. He has won only a single more game than Barry Odom did on the road. But he's made up for it for winning a ton at home. So, there you go. That one surprised me. The vibes were always bad around Odom, but like 35, I know 35 versus 34.8 is splitting hairs there, but like first shocking upset.
No, just because I knew Drinkwitz wasn't good on the road, so that doesn't surprise me, especially the fact that they were so close.
Yeah, give it another year, and we'll rub that one out. Yeah. Okay, so now here's we get to the fun one. Okay, I want you to rank the winning percentage of Mizzou coaches against teams ranked higher than Missouri at the end of year SP Plus rankings. Not when they played, but if Missouri finished 20th, what was their record against 19, 18, 17, 16, 14, 15, all the way to 1? All right. That is, well, I'll just shut up. What do you need to rank him out? What do you think?
I'm going to go Pinkel, Drinkwitz, Odom.
Pinkel, Drinkwitz, Odom. Very good. Number 1 is Drinkwitz. Do you want to guess what his winning percentage is against teams that are better than him at the end of the year?
Oh gosh, it's probably like 15 to 20%, something like that.
Oh, you're so negative. You can do a little bit better than that. It's 31%.
Okay.
He is 9-20 against teams that ended up ranked higher in SP Plus at the end of the year.
Better than I thought.
Yeah. Number 2 is Gary Pinkel at 29.7%. He was 22-52 against teams ranked better than him, which leaves dear old Barry Odom at 13.3%. That is a 2-13 record against any team that was better than his in SP Plus, which kind of fits the vibes. But let's flip it. I want you to rank the coaches' winning percentage against teams that ranked lower than Missouri at the end of the year SP Plus rankings. Go.
Knock on wood, Drinkwitz has not lost any just horrible games. And this will apply to a different question a little bit later on. So I'm going to go Drinkwitz 1 by virtue of not having dropped any just how did that happen games. Then I'll go Pinkel, and then I'll go Odom.
Yeah, this one I think is the vibes are right. Drinkwitz is number 1 with a bullet 86.7% against teams that are worse than his in SP Plus. He is 26-4 in those games. 26-4. Gary Pinkel is number 2 at 80.2%. Again, even when he was there, people would say, look, beat the teams you're supposed to beat, win a couple flips. Like, that's all you got to do to be great. And that's exactly what Gary Pinkel did. He was 85-21 against teams that his team was better than in the final SP Plus rankings. And then you get to Barry Odom, and this was the problem, 61.3%. He went 19-12 against teams that were statistically worse than his. 19-12.
Yeah, you lose to Middle Tennessee State at home, and that's gonna hurt.
It's gonna happen. Okay, here's a fun one. I want you to rank Missouri's coaches' winning percentage against conference division opponents. Now, keep in mind, last year was the first year that Missouri did not have division opponents. So don't count last year. But between Pinkel, Odom, and Drinkwitz, who had the better division record?
I'm going to go Pinkel number 1.
Okay.
Then I'm going to go, because he won 4 division titles.
Mm-hmm.
So by virtue of that in and of itself, I'm going to give him the thumbs up there. Plus the fact that he played on just a terrible North Division for a long time. So division, Pinkel 1. Then I'm going to go. Well, this is tough because I bet they're pretty close. I'm going to go Drinkwitz 2, Odom 3, just because Drinkwitz did have 2023 where he did well. So Pinkel, Drinkwitz, Odom.
You're accurate. Now, I think the numbers are going to surprise you, and not in the way that you're going in here. Pinkel is number 1. He had a 55.4% winning percentage against division opponents. He was 41-33. Drinkwitz is actually not that far behind. He's at 54.2. He is currently 13-11 against division opponents. And of course, that ain't going to change because we don't have division opponents anymore. So that's pretty much locked in. And then, of course, Barry Odom. This was the other problem. He was a 33.3% winning percentage against division opponents. He was 8-16 in 4 years. That's how you get fired, friends. That's how it happens. Also fighting with your boss. Don't do that. Okay. Here's another fun one for me. How do the coaches rank up winning percentage against their rivals? And for this purpose, for this exercise, I'm defining rival as Arkansas, Illinois, Iowa State, don't forget that one, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and South Carolina.
If it has a trophy, it's a rival.
It is, yes. So,
oh man, this one's tough because Odom played very few of these, but he had a good record against Arkansas. Mm-hmm. He didn't play Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Iowa State, Illinois. He did play
South Carolina.
Did not do well against South Carolina.
Yep.
So I kind of I'm gonna go Drinkwitz 1, and then Pinkel 2, Odom 3.
Okay. You got Drinkwitz, 80%, 8-2 currently against trophy games. Odom is second. Now, part of this is a small sample size, but he went 5-3, which is 62.5%.
That's what I should have done, because Pinkel lost to Nebraska and Oklahoma every year like it was his job.
Pretty
so
much.
That
It
really
was.
screwed his percentage up. Now,
yeah, he's not far off, but he had a 56.4% winning percentage. He was 31-24 in rivalry games. So there you go. All right, against power opponents. Now, this is defined as a team that is currently playing in a power conference at the time of the game. And yes, we are now counting the defunct Pac-12. Pinkel, Odom, Drinkwitz, go.
I'm going to go, and this is probably more sample size than anything, but Drinkwitz, Pinkel, Odom.
Drinkwitz, Pinkel. Okay, good. You're close. Pinkel, number 1, barely, 54.4%. So he's 80-67. Then Drinkwitz with a 54 flat, 54.0% against power opponents. He's 27-23. And then, Odom, 39.5%. He went 15-23. The flip side of that coin, against G5 opponents, which again is defined as a team that's playing in a group of 5 conference at the time of the game.
That will be, well, okay, so Drinkwitz has not lost to a G5 opponent, so he's going to be number 1. No, I take that back, because he did lose to Army.
He did.
So that's 1. But I can't recall another time that he's lost to a G5 opponent. Now, 2020, he didn't even play any G5 opponents. 2021, I didn't lose to any. Yeah, that he didn't have any other disastrous games. So I'm going to go Drinkwitz. Then Odom did lose to Middle Tennessee State, as mentioned. I am trying to think of if he lost to any others. I don't think so. So I'll go Odom 2, Pinkel 3, because Pinkel did lose multiple games to G5 teams.
And yes, he did, in agonizing fashion. So yes, Eli Drinkwitz is number 1. He is 8-1 against the G5, with the lone loss being at Army. Pinkel is actually number 2. 81.3% winning percentage. He was 26-6 against G5 opponents. And then Barry Odom, 75%.
Wyoming too. I forgot Wyoming game, of course.
Yep.
How did I forget that one?
Yep. Odom went 6-2.
Yeah, so that put him down. If I had remembered that one, I might have gone Pinkel, but those sample sizes again.
you blocked it from your mind. It's fine. Yeah. We all did. Don't worry about it. All right, and then here's where we get to our current boys' seemingly strong suit. What's the winning percentage against 1-score games, defined as a game that ended in a point disparity of 8 points or less?
Oh gosh, well, I know Drinkwitz is number 1 there. After that, it would be kind of a guess. No, I'm going to go Drinkwitz, Pinkel, Odom. If Odom's teams didn't put up 80 points, then they were probably not going to win. So Drinkwitz, Pinkel, Odom.
Very good. That is exactly right. Drinkwitz is at 69.2%. He is 18-8 in 1-score games at Mizzou. Pinkel is second with a 51.7% winning percentage, basically a coin flip. He's 30-28. And then Odom, 30.8%. He went 4-9 in 1-score games. Oh, Barry. Let's go after the second perceived strength of our current boy. What is the Mizzou coach's winning percentage after a bye week, not counting the first game of the year or the bowl games?
That's one. I mean, I would go Drinkwitz 1. After that, it's kind of a guess, because I don't recall when Odom's bye weeks came or who played after them. So kind of guessing, but I'll go again. Drinkwitz, Pinkel, Odom.
Bravo. When in doubt, that's a pretty good one. Drinkwitz is first at 71.4% winning percentage after a bye week. He is 5-2. Gary Pinkel was 47.6% winning percentage in a bye week. I was shocked by that one. He went 10-11 after bye weeks. I'm shocked. And then, of course, Barry Odom, non-shocked, 1-4.
Yeah. That doesn't, surprise me that much. Pinkel's strengths were on program building. They weren't necessarily on game planning up a specific opponent. So that's where you, for the most part, you're going to get if you have a really good post bye week record, it's either your team's always getting hurt early and they're getting healthy later in the year, or your one of your strengths is game planning up your very next opponent and doing a good job doing that. And that just wasn't really Pinkel's forte. He had other fortes, but that wasn't really one of them.
There you go. All right, now we get into the SP Plus stuff, and I love this stuff because it just paints a picture, man. It just paints a really fun picture. So let's start at the top. Nathan Hurst, I want you to rank their winning percentage against teams that finished the year ranked in the SP Plus top 10.
This one's tough. I mean, I think I have to go Pinkel, and then Pinkel, then Drinkwitz, then Odom, just because I can't recall them either Drinkwitz or Odom winning a game against an AP. Well, I guess they beat Ohio State. They probably were top 10. So they both Pinkel and Drinkwitz have at least one. Talking this out loud, but Pinkel played way more just over the course of more years, so his percentage might be lower. I'm gonna switch it. Drinkwitz, Pinkel, Odom.
Drinkwitz, Pinkel, Odom. Incorrect.
Okay.
Pinkel is 13.8%. He was first. 4.25.
Yeah.
My God. Now that's 15 years of data. So like that's fine. Odom is actually number 2.
Wow. What wins over top 10 teams did he have?
1. He had 1.
So just because he coached one less year, he gets the virtue of that. Yeah.
1-7, and then Drinkwitz was 1-11.
Who was it? Who was the one? Who am I not thinking of?
Let me pull it up. Let me tell you. The fact that I can't think of it off the top of my head. Oh yeah, Florida in 2018.
Florida game in 2018?
2018. Florida ranked 9th in SP Plus.
I wouldn't have thought that they ended up being that good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good job, Barry.
Good job, man. 1-7 versus 1-11. Give it a couple years and Drinkwitz will catch up, but there you go. All right. Now here's the crunchy one. Because top 10, okay, like you're not gonna win those. Top 11 through 25. You kind of need to win these every once in a while, especially if you're Missouri. You kind of expected to at least hold serve, if not pull ahead. So, Nathan Hurst, what is the ranking of win percentage against teams that finished the year ranked in the SP Plus 11 through 25?
I'm going to go Drinkwitz 1, Pinkel 2, Odom 3.
Nailed it. Do you want to guess winning percentages or like around area?
Drinkwitz is probably like 35 to 35-ish percent.
Okay.
Odom or Pinkel would be down in the 20 to 25%. Odom has probably just still the 1, maybe 2.
Yeah.
So much lower.
Great. Drinkwitz, 58.3%. He is 7-5.
Wow, that's better than I thought.
7-5. Pinkel is 46.7%. He was 14-16.
Okay.
Barry Odom was at 0.
Yeah.
0-5.
I would have thought it would have been 0-9 or something.
Yeah. Well, hold on.
I guess the SEC East was a little bit down in those years, and so he didn't.
It was, and it didn't matter because the division record stunk anyway.
Right,
good job, Barry.
Right.
Okay, so then we get to kind of the neighborhood that Mizzou hangs out in, the 26 to 50 range. You really need to win these. What were the winning percentages? How do you guess?
I'd go same order: Drinkwitz, Pinkel, Odom.
Okay.
Drinkwitz is probably in the, if he was 55 in the other one, I'd say at least 55, not 60% there. Pinkel probably around 50% again. Odom, not.
Not is a good answer. Very good. I love this one because it's actually Pinkel's number 1, 60.9%, 28-18 against teams ranked in the 26 to 50 range. Wow. Drinkwitz is number 2, only 55.6%. He's 5-4. And that's like your peer programs. Odom was at 50% flat, 7-7 overall. So, I was surprised by that one too. Then the next step down, the 51 to 75 range. What do you think?
Oh man, this is hard because I would say Drinkwitz, Pinkel, Odom.
Drinkwitz, Pinkel, Odom. I
Yeah.
love that. Pinkel's number one at 74.4%,
Wow.
32 and 11. Barry Odom second, 70% winning percentage against the
Wow.
51 to 75. He was 7-3 against those teams.
Hmm.
Eli Drinkwitz is 8-4, 66.7%.
I guess this is where a couple of his bowl losses come in. Lose to Army, lose to Wake Forest. That's two of them. I guess when they lost to Kentucky last year or a couple of years ago, that might have been one. I'm just trying to think of what those other four were. Maybe in 2021 they might have dropped one or two games to it.
So I think one of the things, especially with Drinkwitz, is you got to keep in mind the COVID season was super weird.
Yeah, losing to Mississippi State that year at the end of the year, that was a weird game.
So like he played 3 games in 2020 at the 51 to 75 range, and like that's where the loss came. And then he had 2 losses in 21 when he was kind of like trying to put the team together. So he lost to Boston College in overtime.
Boston College, yeah.
Remember that one? And then he lost to Army in the bowl game, like you said. And then he lost in 22 to Auburn in overtime.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to think about that game anymore.
That's
Okay.
That makes sense.
Moving on.
That makes sense. Moving on. All right, so let's go to the 76 to 100 range. You should probably win these a lot.
Yeah, Drinkwitz, Pinkel, Odom.
Drinkwitz, Pinkel, Odom, you nailed it. Drinkwitz is 100%. Pinkel is 85.7%. He's 18-3. And of course, Barry Odom went 3-2, 60%. Good job, Barry.
Yeah, losing to Wyoming and Middle Tennessee State. And then,
Can't do that.
I'm probably going to go with the same order in the last one as well.
100 plus. 100 plus. What do you got?
Since Drinkwitz has not lost the game to a 100-plus team, he will be number one. We'll go Pinkel 2, Odom 3. Well, was it Odom? No, Pinkel 2, Odom 3. Yeah.
All right. So I put Pinkel number 1 just because he had more wins. He was undefeated, 10-0. Eli Drinkwitz also undefeated, 7-0.
Yeah.
Barry Odom lost the game against the top bottom 100 team. Do you remember who it is?
Was it Middle Tennessee State?
It wasn't. It was Vanderbilt on the road.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
Vanderbilt team. One of the worst Vanderbilt teams of all time.
That Vanderbilt team was worse than 100 S&P plus.
Yes. And then the next year they were even worse. That's the best part.
Oh my God.
I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's your exercise. Good job, Nathan. I want to congratulate you for number 1 stepping up. Well, I made you do it, but stepping up and doing it anyway, putting your thoughts out there.
Half of them right or so.
It doesn't matter. This is just vibes versus numbers. And I think you nailed the vibes for the most part. And I think you got most of them right. It's just a little sample size, a little discrepancy here and there. But, Barry Odom did better than we think. I think everyone would rank him 3rd for most of this stuff. And just, situationally, he was okay. But obviously, he's no longer here. So there's the game. Congratulations, Hurst. You win nothing. Congratulations.
I'll take it. These are the type of efforts that you got to put forward day in and day out if you're gonna meet pay dirt this time next season. So it's off-season training time. We've got to keep our muscles spry.
That's right.
Keep them flexible. Keep them strong. So
you're looking swole, bro. You're looking swole. All right. Well, that was fun. We're not going to do it again, or maybe I'll come up with another game that we can do in the off season because we got a long time. But that's going to be the show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, we enjoyed it. That's why we're here, but we appreciate the downloads and the subscriptions from you all. You can leave a comment or rate us. We love all types of feedback. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Nate G. Edwards. He's at Burst to Hurst. And of course, you can follow the Rockin' Flagship at Rockin' Nation and the podcasting outlet at Rockin' Radio. And if you mess around with Blue Sky, we're all over there too. We appreciate you tuning in this time. We'll try to do better next time. And until then, MIZ.
ZOU.